Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
So first of all, why we learn any programming language? The main purpose of learning any programming language is to develop a software. And software is of two types. One is system software, the other thing will be application software. So system software means if I take a laptop and if I want to start that laptop, I need to install an operating system. That comes under system software like Windows, Linux, and macOS. And coming to application software, this is again categorized into three different fields like desktop application, MS Office. Like if I want to install MS Office, I need to install it in every particular desktop. Whenever I install an OS, I also have to install the MS Office separately. Okay, so this MS Office is a desktop application. Each and every system we have to install it. Or the games we play, every time we have to install it in every system. Or the VLC, media, Adobe Reader, all this comes under desktop applications. Okay, so to develop any of these things, I need to learn a language. It is a programming language. And coming to web application, which is the main center of this entire market now, because any web application is a dynamic application which requires maintenance. And nowadays, all the projects in the market are based on this web application. For example, Facebook, Gmail, this all comes under web application. Any website which operates through internet. Okay. And coming to mobile application, here Android or iOS comes under mobile application. So if you want to develop any mobile application, you need to learn Android or iOS. So if you see in market, if you want to develop any application or a software, we should have knowledge about a programming language. Among these, like Java, .NET, Python, what we are focusing is on Java. Java is an open source. Open source in the sense, here it's freely available. We don't have to purchase this version and it follows some OOPS standards. So what are the OOPS standards we have? Class, object, encapsulation, abstraction, polymorphism, inheritance. These all six principles define the OOPS. If you see, Java follows OOPS, .NET follows OOPS, Python follows OOPS, Android also follows OOPS. So all the major particular languages depends on this principle called as OOPS. So if you want to enter into this software field, the term OOPS you should understand, and at least you should have knowledge about class and object. So what I'll do, I'll just give a quick introduction of what is class and what is object now. So that what is class and what is object, if you understand, you can write that particular code. So what is object here? A real world entity which exists physically. Like in your surroundings, you can see any physical entity which is visible to us and it has some properties and it can perform any action. That is considered as a object. For example, you can say the laptop you're using or the books you have or the pen we use, all this comes under objects which are visible to us. It has some properties like shape and we use them for a particular purpose. Okay. Now, what is not an object? Object means which exists physically, we can see that. What is not an object? is nothing but energy, air, thoughts. This comes under class. So, what is class which doesn't exist is a class. Okay. And here, energy, air, force, or anything we can say it as a class itself. Now, if you consider, let's take an example of mango. We have seen a mango, it exists, it has some color, it has some properties, right? We have seen a particular apple, it has some color and shape. But what about fruit? Have we seen any fruit? No, right? So fruit is what here? A category. So fruit is a class because this fruit is a collection of this apple and mango. Or you can say collection of objects is nothing but class. Okay. So fruit doesn't exist. We can't see a fruit, but we can see an apple and a mango. That's the reason fruit is a class and apple and mango are the objects. Understood this point, everyone? Any questions?
No.
So now tell me, animal, class or object?
Class.
Tiger?
Object.
Object.
Because we can see a tiger, but we cannot see an animal, right? Now,
Yes.
flower, class or object?
Class.
Class. And rose?
Object.
Because we can see a rose, but we cannot see a flower, right?
Yes.
Now, person, class or object?
Class.
So, what are the properties of a person? And what are the actions of a person? If you want to identify a person, we should identify his properties first, right? And
Yes.
what are the actions performed by him?
Like walk, talk.
Those are the actions. What are the
Yeah.
properties?
Like a
Maybe
color,
his height.
height.
Height. Weight.
Yes. The name, age, height, weight, gender comes under
Properties.
properties. And what are the actions? Speak, walk, talk, eat, sleep, right? So, till now, what we discussed is a general scenario of what class can be and what a particular object can be. Now, if you want to write a program for the same example, let's consider this person is a class. So, what I'll do, I'll write a class person. And we know that this particular name, age are the properties, right? So, what are the properties? Like int age and float height. And what are actions like eat, sleep, walk, speak are the actions. So what we are
Yeah.
trying to see here, the thing is class person, age is a variable, height is a variable, eat and read are the methods. Okay. So eat and read will be the methods. And now, what we need to do, this class, entire class doesn't exist, right? You need to understand this simple point. The thing is, in Java, a class doesn't occupy any memory inside the RAM. Means, if I want to store that age, there are no bytes occupied for that age. So if I want to store any value, let's say, suppose you are playing a game in the system. So you will give a character name. Where this character name will get stored inside the RAM, there will be a memory. In that memory, the name will be getting saved. The same way, whenever you write a class, we need to occupy some memory. And here, class doesn't exist means it does not occupy any memory. So to allocate that memory, we are creating a object like Rahul. So what this object means, inside RAM, a memory will be allocated and age and height will occupy some memory. So here that locations will be allocated inside the RAM when we create a person Rahul. And when I say Rahul dot age is 22, so what happens here? That age is 22, which is getting stored inside the Rahul. So inside Rahul memory, the age will be 22. So every time to access that age, we should have that memory location. And that Rahul will be the memory location, you can say. If I create another memory, let's say I want to create a particular John, what happens? Another memory will be created, and if I say John dot height, that height will be 6. And if I say John dot age, that age will be some particular 32 or 42. So what's happening here? The age you can see here declared only once, but I was able to get two different locations of age based on two different memories, right? Or two different objects. So Java is a simple principle where the variables and methods are declared only once. We have that age and height or eat and read are written only once, but we can use them a repeated number of times based on repeated number of object creations. So for n objects, n locations will be created and n values can be stored. So that is the advantage of having this class and object. That's the reason OOPS indicates object oriented programming structure. Everything revolves around this object itself. So without this object, we cannot do anything in this Java. Okay. So is it clear till now? Any questions?
No.
The basic principle is itself is clear that in Java we have a lot of classes, but for any class there is no memory. So we create this memory, or you can say some bytes, which occupies inside the RAM. And when I store the value, these values are getting stored in that bytes. Simple. So if you understand this, daily we'll be writing the class, this particular variables, methods, and the object creation can be done. So once this is clear, the remaining OOPS principles we'll see in the classes. Because this is a basic part. If you understand, you can write code now. And now we'll see what is Java full stack. So what I'll discuss now, let's take a Facebook login. When you give a username and password, click on login, what happens? And what all technologies we can use for a login purpose, that we have to see. Okay. So here the full stack contains what technologies, or throughout this course what technologies I'll be covering. We'll discuss those things now. Okay. The first part was why programming and why Java, where oops class and object was explained. So that daily whenever I'll explain a concept, I'll take an example which is related to the real time scenario, like insurance, you can say banking or travel, anything, restaurant, vehicle, which are in the current market. We have applications, so those things we take and try to replicate them as a program. So for every concept, a new example will be taken. So it'll make you understand the concept. Now, what we are going to discuss is the technologies we'll be covering throughout this course. And for that, I'll take a sample Facebook login, how we do it. So for Facebook login, this is a page. So to create this page, what all technologies we use? First, we use HTML. What is HTML? Hypertext Markup Language. where this particular HTML is used to design this text box and the button. Only the text box and buttons are designed using this HTML. What about this coloring and styles? We use CSS3. HTML5 we are using and CSS3. So what is CSS? Cascading Style Sheet. Here, this coloring and animation we can apply using this CSS to that particular application. Now, when you give username and password or without any value, you click on login, it will say, please enter username and password. So who is checking whether the values are given properly or not, whether the email is entered properly or not? So that is done by JavaScript. And this JavaScript is like a client-side validation where the data entered in the text box is correctly or not is checked by the JavaScript itself. Okay. And next, we use a framework known as TypeScript, which is the extension of JavaScript to build a React application. So currently, Facebook has developed this React, and in the current market, all the companies are also using this React framework as a front end. Okay. So what is this React? Here, if you use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, if I write 1,000 files, 1,000 pages will be created. But coming to React, it doesn't create 1,000 pages. Rather, it has only one page, but 1,000 components, like 1,000 modules, you can say. Based on the requirement, it will replace the module to that particular page. So rather than having 1,000 pages, it's better to have 1,000 functions or 1,000 components, you can say. Okay. Any questions till now? So till now, what I have said is understandable to everyone. Why we use front-end technologies? These are all comes under front-end only, and all these things we'll learn throughout this course. So whatever we are discussing, we'll have that thing in the training. So no questions? Shall I move forward?
Yes. Yeah.
So next, these values should go through a container, web container, which contains a server. So what server we are using? We are using a Apache Tomcat server. In the current market, we have WebLogic, JBoss, and different servers are there. But mostly company uses Apache Tomcat. Reason open source. Okay, and compatible with the Java. And what are the server side technologies we use? Like in the text box, whatever the username and password is entered should be retrieved by the server side technology. So we'll be using first servlets and JSP as a backend. Okay. And what are servlets and JSP? To handle the request, the username and password, we can use the servlets and JSP. And after this, a framework was built upon this servlets and JSP. That is nothing but Spring. So framework is nothing but already the code will be there. Most of the repetition of the code is written directly and we'll use it. So we don't have to write it again and again. Or you can say a boilerplate code which is already present, and based on my requirement, I can use that directly. And upon Spring, we also have one more thing known as Spring Boot, which is being used in the current market. So front end will be the React framework, and the back end will be the latest thing will be Spring Boot. So Spring Boot 3 version is the latest thing, but we'll be using 2 to get that particular hang of the application. And now, whenever we enter the details and click on the button, there might be two types of request. One is static request, the other thing is dynamic request. So what is static request? The Facebook login page you see, it's a static page which does not change every time. So that, or you can say in Wikipedia, if I search a particular person like Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli, what happens? The information displayed with every request will be same. And coming to dynamic request, it's like your result, exam result. Based on your hall ticket number, what happens? The page output changes. So every hall ticket number will have a different result compared with the previous one. And the Facebook homepage, like if you give a username and password for every user, the homepage is not same. It will be varying from one page, one person to another person. So that's a dynamic request. So whenever we have a text box and a button, that you can consider as a dynamic request when we enter the data and click on the button. Okay. And what all databases will use? Because somewhere we have to store this data. At the time of registration, the username, password, email, all these phone number details will be stored in a database. So database is for a storage purpose. So what all databases we'll discuss, like MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, or PostgreSQL. So mostly everything will be similar, you can say. Okay. If you know MySQL, the commands of PostgreSQL and MySQL will be similar compared with Oracle also. So all these database can be used in the current market along with the projects. So now, suppose a username and password has been entered and clicked on the login. What happens? That request is taken by the web server. So is it a static request or a dynamic request? Dynamic request. So web server cannot do anything. It will give that values directly to the server side technology. And now server side technologies can handle dynamic request. But in order to check whether this username and password exist in the database or not, we use database technologies like JDBC for servlets and JSP, Hibernate for Spring Framework, and JPA for Spring Boot. So whenever the username is password is given, this database technologies will check in the database whether this username and password exist or not. If it is exist, a object is written or a record is written to the database technologies, and based on the record, these are given to the server side technology and will generate a page. Server side technology will create a page and give it to the web server. Web server will hand it over to the user. So this is the process happening internally throughout that particular application. But here you need to understand front-end technology and back-end technology are two different technologies. So how come the data entered in the text box is understandable by Spring or Spring Boot? Here for that we use a REST API. So what is REST API? Here the data entered in the text box will be converted into a JSON format, and the JSON format data is transferred to the backend with the help of this API, REST API. So two different technologies can interact or share the data between them with the help of this REST API and JSON data like JavaScript object notation. Okay. And next thing, to check whether the API is working correctly or not, Whether the URL contains the proper data or not, we can check it using a postman. To test the URLs, we use this postman tool, and we can discuss at the end of the REST API how we handle it. And in the companies, we have lot of developers working on a single project. So how come that code is getting integrated? We'll be using Git, where we'll be having branching, push, pull request, and all, and we'll go through these things in the Git. Coming to the IDE, like integrated development environment, we can use either Eclipse to write the code or IntelliJ. So in the current market, they are using either Eclipse or IntelliJ in the projects. So we'll be using these two things. So this is the things we have. If you have any questions, you can ask now. So throughout this, and after completing everything, we'll discuss about the monolithic architecture and how come this monolithic is different from microservices. So microservices is nothing but the entire huge application is divided into parts. So we'll see an example where the microservices application will be created and how the Eureka server is being used in that. So these are all the things we'll learn throughout this training, and we'll create an application. So simply I'll create multiple projects and show you in the session itself, and you will be replicating them, or you'll create your own projects based on the requirement task. Understood? Any questions?
No.
So I hope everyone understood how this Java full stack works and what all requirements we have. So anyone has any questions, they can ask. So once you complete this training daily, I'll be giving you tasks and daily application, like in the Spring Boot and servlets and JSP, will create the application. We'll even discuss about the security. So how that security will come into the picture. I didn't discuss here because it will come under Spring itself. So how that Spring security and JWT token is used and all, we'll discuss at that time. If you know technically, you will understand those at that time. A small application where React will be used as a front end, the data will be transferred to the back end, and we'll store it in the database, retrieve it from the database. Check through Postman whether the URL is working fine or not. So no questions?
No.
So were you all able to follow the things?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So yeah. Thanks for your time, guys. Saurabh, you can take over. Okay, then so I'm ending the meeting then. Okay, guys.
Yeah, thank you.